Hey guys, it's me, Ascari Navarro, Drama King, and life is drama, drama is life, and I really hope you guys are staying safe and hopefully, protest smartly and hey, let's let's make sure we're all together and that we all fight for justice and the greater good. And let's make sure that we stand in unity and make sure we say their names. All right. Sorry if I've been delaying so many things because of so many things going on, not just in this world, but also realizing the situation, the current analysis, especially with so much with rioting, with so much and but we still need to make sure we make a difference anyway as possible as we can. And even if you are protesting, make sure to do it safely though. And that's all I'm gonna say. And let's make sure we all fight for justice for the families of those who lost their loved ones of police brutality. All right, I'm going to talk about season 4 to 7 of Knots Landing. I know it's been a while, and sorry for the delay though. But coming from season 1 to 3 though, especially in the first 3 seasons, there was a lot of like filler, like those one episode where where they're in a situation and then like they deal with it and then problem solve. But it's not until season 4 that things really change and take a turn for the better. Anyway, it wasn't until that one inclusion would change how things really were. That would be Lisa Hartman. Alright, once season 4 got started, that's when we met new people. And that's when we would end up realizing, hey, old faces may be leaving and it would get interesting. Anyway, around season 4, after Gary's affair with Abby, and that's when Val really slowly starts to discover herself a lot more, especially with the success of her book, which is called Capricorn Crude. And with the success though, she would change dramatically her style around season 4, and it would become much more of, and that's when the style really did change from casual to more glamorous. And during the way of that affair though, Gary and Abby would become a couple with a ton of problems. And there he would meet Ciji Dunn, which is a singer who he would meet, and boy, it got very interesting and would turn tables around. Karen, on the other hand, though, after what had happened, after losing her husband, there she would get help from Mac Mackenzie. And that's when things really take a really good turn, though. Richard and Laura's marriage went from back to normal to see how it's gonna end up. But yeah, and then there Kenny and Ginger, they would be on the side, but at least there is at least singing and recording. But anyway, during that period though, we would hear Ciji sing, which was beautiful, and you definitely would enjoy the songs even though they're covers and everything you can ever ask in an 80s love song. But also, it would get interesting is that there would be another guy in the picture. His name is Chip Roberts, and Chip would end up playing with both Diana and Ciji, which is Diana is Karen's daughter, and what would happen is that he used both women, and it was also interesting because like during this whole situation though, it would lead to a tragedy, and it would end up with a lot of people being questioned, it was insane. And fortunately during that time though, Gary's drinking would go up again, and it would lead him to do crazy things, and boy, it was really interesting. But besides that though, around that time, for those who have seen Dallas, Gary would end up inheriting millions from his father, Jock. And there, around that time though, there was an episode where there would be the final Dallas Knots Landing crossover, in which one JR and Bobby would make their final appearances on Knots, which I'll explain it to you more on season 7, but which was also very memorable and very, very interesting. And during that time, though, as Abby would say to JR, she owes infidelity. but at the end of the season, though, things would change. The Wards would move to Nashville, as Ginger would become a singer. Richard left her, which was like one of the most poignant scenes after he thinks he was accused of murdering Ciji, and Laura just losing it, which was very interesting. And Gary ending up in jail for something he didn't even do. And what was also really interesting is that he would end up being in one of the worst states he's ever been. Period. And for those who have recovered from alcohol, would experience the same problem. Which one? It would detoxify, and my goodness, it was quite a scene. But what really stood out, though, it was the ending where Val would talk to Gary and realize, hey, you know what? You are not the murderer. While someone's getting away, you're doing something for someone, and it wasn't even worth it. But yeah, and then at the end of the season, though, Chip and Diana would flee after finding out that Chip was a murderer, and that his real name was Tony Fennis, and that he was wanted for assaulting an old woman. And you also remember the scenes where Chip, aka Tony, and Lila May would like strike up a friendship, but then it would find out, hey, at least around that time though, thankfully it didn't happen to our Lila May and her auto harp. But it wasn't until season 5 though things would take another interesting turn, not only with a new set of characters, but something that would definitely change the storyline together. Let's roll it here for season 5. It wasn't until you see the theme song, not just is a reminiscent of a new beginning, but a very new moment. And by the way, though, Laura still has a hairstyle from 1983. And I forgot to mention around season 4, the Richard had a restaurant which had a lot of financial troubles, and there was a scene though where Laura went insane, and I could tell, because also realizing, hey, her own husband left her. There was just so much guilt, so much pain going on, and just smashing the pots and pans, and it was just insane. But in season 5 though, her fortune would change once more. Alright, around season 5 though, after finding out that Gary was innocent, he would end up going in business. And around that time though, Abby definitely wanted to control his money and wanted him to still stay in jail and fund her own company, which is Apaloon. And then it wasn't until Gary came back and things really got interesting. And then Laura would work for Gary, and then that would be the beginning of an era called Lotus Point, which would be a resort, and boy, let's just say it turned into a conflict zone. And over that time though, Mac and Karen are married, and Karen and Diana would have such series of problems. And at that time though, Diana was already brainwashed by Chip, and even to the point of hiding and defending her husband, which is very, very sad. And there was one scene where Eric, which is one of Karen's sons, would slap her, and even though it's not okay nowadays, but only to, after all the things Diana said, around that time though she wasn't right in the head, as you can see. And then what also really grew interesting in this moment though is that around the time though Gary and Abby ended up married, and then Kathy, and then which was a woman who looked the same as Ciji, and it would be played by none other than Lisa Hartman. Now it's Lisa Hartman Black, but it would also take a toll and then take another love triangle, and boy, it really did get really good. And then there was also one memorable moment though where Lily May hit Chip with her car, because after finding out everything though, it was insane. And then we were able to meet Four, and he would end up becoming an icon to the show, which is Greg Sumner. In which one he would definitely would plan with Abby, and then he would end up slowly develop a relationship with Laura while married and having his daughter. And then around that period though, Karen had problems with, was dealing with an addiction of pills, which was very, 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 very heart-wrenching, and but it definitely was very poignant around the time how addiction was handled, especially back in 1983 and 1984, even till today. And then around the time though, Val would end up meeting a new man in her life. That would be Ben, who is a journalist, and both of them would fall in love. And then around that time though, Val ended up pregnant by Gary, in which one was just, boy, was just quite a shocker. And then we would have the next big baddie, which is the Wolfbridge group, in which one Abby would end up associated with, and it would lead to a lot of crazy things going on. But what's also really amazing though was the season finale, in which one it would lead to first Gary's quote unquote demise, in which one during that time though, especially at that time, Kathy's ex-husband would come in and drama would ensue. And then around that moment of the funeral scene, which was like really interesting, that none of the Ewings showed up, but only to find out that Gary was under protection, and finding out that Abby did who knows what to his company. And then like once Gary came back, and there's one scene though after Val finding out about it, she went berserk, and Mac had to hold her, and boy, it was brilliant, the scene and the acting. And then Greg would pair up with Laura, and then Abby and Laura would go head to head, especially Laura and her remarks, which were really out there. And that's when we see a much stronger Laura who wasn't afraid to tackle or handle anything. And she ended up evolving from the suffering woman all the way to the tough woman we would end up admiring in spite of her own faults. And then around the time though, Val is still handling a writing career and starting her life over again. And then around the time right before the finale, Karen and her daughter Diana would reconcile and handle their own problems, which was interesting. But it wasn't until the final scene of the season finale, it's when Karen would get shot, the Wolfbridge group would kidnap Abby, and then Val sees Gary, and then she was in the last scene, she was crying and her hair went big. And just find it on YouTube and you'll find it out for yourself. And boy, it really did get quite good. In season 6 though, that's when things really get much more interesting. And around that time though, season 6 though, even everything changed, especially the hairstyles, in which one we would see bobs, short hairs, and quite more like that. And then around that moment, though, and forgive me if I'm doing shaky cam, but around season 6, though, that's when we would have a heart wrenching storyline in a long lost brother, which is quite interesting. And season 6, though, starts when after Abby ended up being rescued from Wolfbridge. And what's also interesting about season 6, though, is that we would end up having the long lost son, which is Joshua, which turned out to be Lila May's son and Val's brother, in which one he would come from a very conservative, old-fashioned religious household, and unfortunately things didn't go the way they were, and then he would end up with Kathy, in which one it would turn into a mess, and then Karen would end up joining with Gary, in which one they would help develop Lotus Point. And then around the time, though, Val was already pregnant, and then all of a sudden one of the workers would end up committing something which one Abby would say, but it would lead to a kidnapping, especially around that time, though. Val gave birth to the twins, and the evil doctor, Dr. Ackerman, would end up telling her that her babies were dead, only to find out that they were illegally adopted, which was quite interesting. And then we would meet Galveston, which turned out to be Greg's real biological father, and then we would have the great Ava Gardner as Greg's mother, in which one she would ensue drama as well, which I would have liked it if, and everybody would say if they would keep her as well, because I felt like she was brilliant, and because of her health problems and so many things, though, it's understandable, but it would have been fun to watch that, in which one she would also become basically a pie en el zapato, which is basically would do anything to separate Greg and Laura, even though Greg already ended his marriage with his first wife, Jane, and Abby and Ava Gardner would end up scheming, and then there it would then begin the beginning of Empire Valley. And then once Paul Galveston dies, though, and then that's when Greg's life starts to change, and that's when Gary would end up with Empire Valley, which was okay, but the season the thing that got us most kept, though, was the kidnapping storyline, which is quite interesting, in which one they would be adopted by Sheila and Harry, who would have the kids. And then all of a sudden, though, even though so much so Abby's conscience got basically in the way, and then there would be another tragedy, which would be that Dr. Ackerman would shoot himself, and after Mac and Karen discovered that that he was also involved in the illegal adoption, which unfortunately, though, child trafficking still exists today, and it's tough. But at that time, though, Joshua and Kathy would marry, which was also a very tragic one, which I'll go into season 7. And then around that time, though, around the season finale, that's when Val and Abby would meet in the beach, and then Abby would tell her that her babies are alive, and then with the iconic scene, it was just wow. And they would end up with really good ratings at that time. And then around that moment, though, she would end up struggling to to at least. Boy, and that's when we would get into season 7. Season 7 was alright, but the thing that was really wonderful is that around the time, though, Val, Karen, Mac would fight to make sure that the kids were safe and sound. And they were. Around that time, though, Bobby would die, especially around 1985, 84, 85 season, where Bobby basically passed and was hit by a car and so many things. Even though I'll be honest, I don't really watch Dallas that like faithfully, but around the time that Gary would find out, and then Val got her babies back and would name one of the kids Bobby after Bobby Ewing, and then Betsy after Ben's aunt, and then after good old Ben's aunt. And then around that time, though, Val and Ben would end up married, and this is basically her third marriage, because at this point, though, it's Val and Ewing Gibson. And the list would go on later seasons, but which is quite interesting. And then I still feel like, I think around that time, though, Gary is still in love with Val, even though he's already married to Abby around this period. And then around that time, though, there was there were some things that were a little, which were quite funny. And then with the satellite portal, which, yeah. And then around the end of season 6 and season 7, we would end up meeting Jill Bennett, which was which would work for Mac. And then, yeah, but you'll be surprised at how her character will turn out in the end in the next video. But then and then Kathy and Joshua ended up where Kathy was already abused by Joshua, which in that one moment where Lily Mae goes to confront Joshua, like after he lost his mind completely, after everything, after all the fame and success, and then all of a sudden he went in tripping and falling to his death, which was like quite a interesting scene, and which was also reflective of so many things. But yeah, and around that time, though, Val would end up losing her accent bit by bit, in which one, yeah. And then I also like the scenes, at least what I liked about this season, in spite of everything, though, is that at least you get to see her have some moments with Laura, which is not shown as much as in the earlier seasons, though. And, still have a friendship with Karen, and which was really, really wonderful. And then Karen would go back at Lotus Point. And then around that time, though, Olivia was dealing with a drug problem. Was already beginning stages of a drug problem, which one, Michael, which is also Karen's younger son, would end up getting arrested. And then Olivia was staying with Karen and Mac, and there was just a lot of conflict after Olivia found out that Abby knew about the kidnapping. And around that time, though, and especially there was a scene, though, where they were at the party, and Abby was looking glamorous and beautiful as ever, and then especially with the big chains after she already took off the what's it called? I'll get back into that. And then once after everybody ended up finding out. From Val to Karen to Laura to everyone. Which was quite interesting. And then along there would be a new baddie, which is Peter Hollister. In which one, the whole Peter thing, but it was those situations that kept me watching. And even though it would start to be okay, and then around the time, though, Empire Valley and the blow up, which was like, wow. But what I really like, what also liked, is that one scene where when Val was already at her when Val was getting married to Ben, that Gary would end up seeing her, which was beautiful. And yeah, and especially even though Gary already knew he was the father, but it was just so much emotions in that scene. But what I really liked about the season, but what also is that I forgot to mention, is that after Joshua's demise, then Ben and Kathy would work together and even have a little bit of an affair, which was also quite shocking. Because one, we would never expect that, and then a surprise would end up coming, and then that surprise would stay until the finale. It would be that Mac would have a daughter named Paige, which at that time though Lisa Hartman was already leaving, and then Nicolette Sheridan would be the new face, and would end up staying there permanently until the finale. But there was just so much going on around that season, and then it wasn't until one of the final, basically kind of the final scene of the season finale, where Gary and Val would be at the beach though, and they would say, "What a life of our messes we really made," something like that, and it was very beautiful. Like they still at least bonded even after what they've been through together, which is a quite interesting turn. And this is basically the fire seasons, as I would call it, and hopefully if I don't sound too, hopefully I don't get PC, but that's when the show would end up making sparks, and then it would finally have conflicts, not just one episode, but like that would appear season after season, and then, which is quite interesting. Even though the next three, one didn't start out, but some things changed and pushed in this next video. And if there's anything that I left out, anything, please let me know. Please add your comments in the section, and let me know if you like it, if you don't like it, and if you have any questions, suggestions, anything like that. I'll be glad to take them as suggestions. Alright, have a wonderful day, you guys, and please make sure to stay safe, and make sure to always wear your mask when you're going out, and especially if you're going protest, make sure to wear goggles, make sure to wear mask, anything, because you never know what can happen. And please stay safe, and please have our communities protected, and all we want is just justice and change is going on. And please make sure to vote. Even if you're protesting, make sure to always put your voice in voting as well. And if you are, in regards to the state though, if you haven't registered to vote, please register as soon as possible before the due date, regarding the state that you live in. Because one, we really need to give our country a drastic makeover. But it's going to take time, it's going to take a lot of effort, and it's going to take a lot of changes. And it's up to us to make sure we go through those together, even if there's bumpy roads along the way. Alright, take care, you guys, and see you guys in the next one.